For weeks, in secret, they've been rounding up suspects, here using distraction devices to deter a hostile response. Every police force in the country has been involved. More than 700 arrests.
It begins on a quiet road in South Yorkshire, May 22nd, 2020. In the pre-dawn stillness, a car is flagged down. The boot pops open, revealing 2 heavy suitcases, not packed for a holiday, but laden with dark secrets. That single discovery ignites an investigation, one that will unravel a sprawling nationwide empire. Months later, on a Teesside lay-by, another stop reveals bundles of cash. The first thread linking Couriers in Leeds to a supply line stretching deep into the northeast. By 2021, detectives are closing in, tracing the financial masterminds behind a separate £100 million operation. And in Leeds, decrypted EncroChat messages expose a web of multi-kilo deals in cocaine and ketamine. 4 operations, 4 syndicates. Each one believed they were untouchable. Each brought down by the very evidence they left behind. This is the story of Britain's drug couriers, who became criminal millionaires, and the digital trail that finally brought their empires crashing down. In the spring of 2020, detectives were hunting shadows. They began to piece together the fragmented outline of a syndicate operating far beyond local turf. Intelligence solidified in May. An organized crime group was flooding the nation with heroin and cocaine. At the apex sat 2 men, Imran Mohammed, 36, of Sheffield, and Adris Rahman, 27, of Rotherham. These were not low-level dealers. They were the architects, using the cloak of encrypted devices to manage bulk supply and the relentless flow of cash. Their commands cascaded down a trusted chain of command. Below them were the couriers. The scale was staggering. Between March and May 2020 alone, analysis showed the network had pushed out 176 kilograms of cocaine and 18 kilograms of heroin. These were not street deals. They were wholesale consignments shifted nationwide in mere weeks. The profits mirrored the poison. From March to June, investigators estimated the group amassed over £6.4 million in cash. This wasn't speculation. The figures were ripped directly from their own encrypted ledgers and courier records. Each run added to the total, painting a picture of a criminal enterprise running at industrial speed. Individual couriers handled their share of the load. Joshua Walshaw, 26, was tasked with moving cocaine and heroin to clients and returning with payment. He was found to have delivered over 32 kilograms of cocaine and 3 kilograms of heroin in that brief window, single-handedly generating £651,660 in cash returns. Michael Moore, 40, and his partner, 33-year-old Sarah Jo Fisher, worked the roads as a team. They were linked to 21 separate criminal exchanges, shuttling cash and consignments across the country, their activity accounting for over £2.8 million. Another courier, 38-year-old Christopher Leet, played his part, conducting 19 exchanges that fed nearly £970,000 back into the syndicate's coffers. Each believed their role was simple: drive, deliver, collect. But every journey kept the wheels of this illicit machine turning. The logistics were tight, but they were not invisible. Surveillance teams noted the same faces, the same vehicles, the same patterns. Exchanges were fleeting, carried out in car parks or roadside laybys. Each trip looked mundane from a distance, but when investigators assembled the pieces, the picture was undeniable. What had seemed like small fragments were now part of a national supply chain worth millions. The group believed their system was impenetrable. The police had already begun to prove them wrong. Apart from these members, there was the man who handled the money, Tariq Akram, 38, from Thorpe Hesley in Rotherham. His domain was not the motorways, but the counting rooms. He processed the deluge of cash using machines, elastic bands, and wrappings to track the millions. In May 2020, as he set off for work, officers moved in. In his car's boot, 2 heavy suitcases, bulging with £1.1 million. From there, police immediately descended on his home. A further £161,000 was discovered stashed in the basement, surrounded by cash counters and the paraphernalia of laundering. Here was the proof. Akram was the group's banker, storing and managing profits that flooded in faster than most could comprehend. The intelligence was clear. This was a professional hierarchy: ringleaders, couriers, and a banker. A sophisticated operation hiding behind encrypted phones, moving cocaine and heroin across Britain, all while believing they could not be touched. Akram's arrest was the first devastating crack in the gang's foundation. What looked like a routine traffic stop had just struck the heart of their finances. With the banker neutralized, detectives turned their full attention to the couriers and the kingpins who kept the supply line moving. Surveillance teams had been patiently watching their movements for weeks, mapping their routes, their exchanges, and the flow of cash. By June 2020, the time for watching was over. It was time to strike. The next domino to fall was 26-year-old courier Joshua Walshaw. Travelling south on the M1 near Wakefield, he was intercepted by officers who knew exactly what he was carrying. Inside his vehicle, £150,000 in neatly packed bundles, another slice of the gang's turnover. His arrest validated the pattern investigators had meticulously pieced together. Later that same month, the investigation struck at the head of the snake. In coordinated raids, ringleaders Imran Mohammed and Adris Rahman were arrested. Both were captured with their encrypted phones. When analysed, those devices held the very records investigators needed. Messages revealed the wholesale supply of cocaine and heroin. For police, these devices were the crown jewels. They irrefutably tied the leadership directly to the conspiracy. Attention then pivoted to the remaining couriers. Michael Moore and Sarah Jo Fisher, the pair who had worked exchanges across the region, were detained. Christopher Leet was also apprehended. Each arrest systematically fractured the organization. What had seemed a fluid, untouchable system of handovers and encrypted messages was now collapsing into evidence bags and case files. By the end of June 2020, the gang's key figures, its ringleaders, its couriers, and its banker, were all in custody. The final act would play out in the courtroom, where the true scale of their operation would be laid bare. When the case convened at Leeds Crown Court, the prosecution laid out the staggering figures. Almost 200 kilograms of cocaine and heroin supplied in less than 3 months. More than £6.4 million laundered through courier runs and basement counting rooms. At the conspiracy's head, the ringleaders faced their reckoning. Imran Mohammed, 36, of Sheffield, received the longest sentence, 16 years. His counterpart, 27-year-old Adris Rahman of Rotherham, was handed 14 years and 4 months. The couriers who carried the consignments were also held accountable. Joshua Walshaw was jailed for 6 years. Michael Moore and his partner Sarah Jo Fisher were each sentenced to 20 months. Christopher Leet was given a 12-month sentence, suspended for 18 months. The moneyman who counted and stored the profits, Tariq Akram, had already admitted his role. In March 2021, he had been jailed for 4.5 years. Police confirmed that work was already underway to strip the gang of every ill-gotten asset they had acquired. The millions recovered in cash, along with high-value items, would be subject to forfeiture proceedings. The court's message was unequivocal. The men who had run this empire would not profit from the wreckage they had created. Meanwhile, in Leeds, a new, younger network was aggressively expanding its reach. At just 22 years old, Fahad of Hare Hills was already the linchpin of a supply chain stretching deep into the northeast. He controlled the vehicles, held the dealer lists on his phone, and masterminded the movement of both drugs and cash. Though young, He operated with the brazen confidence of someone who believed his system was too meticulous to be caught. He was surrounded by trusted lieutenants. Muhammad Adil Rahim, 20, served as the courier, handling cash and moving consignments, his journeys connecting the Leeds base with buyers further afield. Another associate, 23-year-old Adil Habib, was the muscle, observed, making repeated trips to their vehicle, shifting items and concealing packages. Hassan Ahmed, 21, managed the stash house, storing products at his home, his role to keep the supply line primed for movement. Muhammad Lukman Dad, 29, was tied to the conspiracy by a simple mistake: his fingerprints on cannabis packaging recovered from a vehicle, connecting him directly to the group's stock. But the true scale of their ambition was found on Fahad's own phone. Dealer lists showed the operation's turnover exploding sharply over just a few months, from £343,365 in June 2020 to £427,625 in September. This was not static income. It was a business in hyper-growth. The phone also held 65 photos and videos, cataloguing bags of white powder being weighed. Experts concluded the images displayed cocaine in various stages. They estimated the material pictured exceeded 9 kilograms, with a potential street value of £385,000. This was the anatomy of the new crew: a young kingpin, 4 associates, and a relentless pipeline of Class A drugs and cash. The break came on October 2nd, 2020. Surveillance officers monitoring activity in the northeast spotted a fleeting, suspicious handover at a lay-by near Teesside. 2 cars pulled up. One of them, a Volkswagen Golf, was driven by the 20-year-old courier, Muhammad Adil Rahim. From a distance, the exchange looked ordinary, quick, discreet, and over in moments. But the officers watching knew enough to move in. When they pulled the Golf over, their suspicions were instantly confirmed. Inside, a designer bag sat on the seat, stuffed with 8 further bundles of cash. When counted, the total reached £21,960. For investigators, it wasn't just the money, it was the context. The cash was packaged for collection, irrefutable proof of a courier run in progress. This stop was more than a routine seizure. It was the linchpin. It was the first hard evidence physically linking the Leeds crew to supply lines stretching into the northeast. Till then, intelligence had merely suggested the network's existence. Now, with cash in hand and a courier caught red-handed, police could begin to map the structure with certainty. The arrest of Rahim set the investigation into high gear. His connection to Fahad was known, but the bundles of cash highlighted the operation's professional scale. A 20-year-old moving tens of thousands in one trip was not acting alone. He was part of a wider chain designed to shuttle cocaine north and funnel cash south, keeping the flow constant. From that point forward, officers tightened their surveillance on Fahad and his associates. The vehicles linked to the group, a BMW, an Audi TT, and a Fiesta, came under strict scrutiny. The Teesside stop had unlocked the door. What lay behind it was the drugs, the DNA, and the evidence hidden in those cars. Watching the group's vehicles revealed their operational rhythm: cars parked in back streets, drivers making quick trips, items moved in seconds. Fahad himself was arrested behind a takeaway on Roundhay Road in Leeds, sitting in the driver's seat of a BMW. Inside the car, police found 268 milligrams of cocaine, packaged for onward supply. Disposable gloves and rolls of small plastic bags were close at hand. And the final nail: forensic testing confirmed Fahad's own DNA on the drug's wrapping. The detail was critical. It placed the ringleader not just at the top, but in direct physical possession of the trade he was directing. Attention turned next to the Audi TT. A search revealed a cocktail of cocaine, MDMA, and cannabis skunk, alongside dealer bags and electronic scales. Over one afternoon, officers had watched 23-year-old Adil Habib repeatedly returning to the vehicle, shifting items and removing packages. DNA swabs from the door handles and gear lever matched him directly to the car and its contents. Another of the group's vehicles, a Fiesta, also yielded evidence. Cannabis skunk and cocaine were recovered, with fingerprints on the packaging matching both Habib and 29-year-old Muhammad Lukman Dad. It was another link in the chain. The trail didn't stop at the cars. When officers raided the home of Hassan Ahmed, they found over 1 kilogram of cannabis, 6 grams of high-purity cocaine, and 94 grams of etizolum, a Class C drug sold on the streets as Xanax. His address was acting as a storage point, a small warehouse of stock ready for movement. Step by meticulous step, the fragments built a complete, undeniable picture. The Leeds group was no longer operating in the shadows. Forensic evidence, seized drugs, and cash runs had dragged them firmly into the open. When the case reached Leeds Crown Court, the overwhelming weight of evidence left no room for doubt. At just 22 years old, the ringleader, Fahad, was handed the heaviest sentence. He received 12 years in prison for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and possession of criminal property. His trusted associates followed. Adil Khabib, 23, was sentenced to 4 years. Hassan Ahmed, 21, received 3 years and 9 months. The Courier, Muhammad Adil Rahim, 20, was sentenced to 3 years and 2 months. The final member, 29-year-old Muhammad Lukman Dad, was jailed for 2 years. Together, the sentences totaled almost 25 years. With the Leeds group sentenced and their network dismantled, investigators' attention shifted to yet another case, one where the money man himself was the central figure in a plot worth hundreds of millions. By 2021, another organised crime group was beginning to surface in West Yorkshire, one with ambitions that stretched far beyond local supply. At its absolute head was Muhammad Tasadik Khan. Investigators would later dub him the architect of a wholesale conspiracy, directing the movement of heroin and cocaine in volumes worth hundreds of millions. His network operated quietly, using trusted runners and coded communications to shift stock across the country. This was no fleeting operation. Its timeline stretched for nearly 3 years, from February 2021 until December 2023. In that time, the group moved drugs in bulk, supplying clients in multiple regions. One of the key figures beneath Khan was Courier Hayyan Alam. His downfall was swift and devastating, coming in a single stop that exposed the conspiracy's reach. Driving a car registered to him, Alam was intercepted by officers who recovered cocaine worth a staggering £1 million from inside the vehicle. The seizure not only ripped a significant consignment off the streets, but also placed Alam firmly within the conspiracy. For his role, he would later be sentenced to 5 years in prison. The loss of that load didn't collapse the network immediately, but it provided investigators a direct route into Khan's organization. Surveillance, phone records, and financial documents began to illuminate the pattern. By August 2024, the evidence against Khan himself was airtight. He appeared before Leeds Crown Court and was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Right after this, in October 2024, 32-year-old Adnan Shabir from Brighouse was jailed for 7 years and 6 months, also for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. His role wasn't at street level. He was part of the logistical framework that kept the operation running. But even with Khan, Alam, and Shabir in custody, this investigation was far from over. Detectives knew others were still out there, not directing consignments or driving cars, but managing the money that made the entire network possible. While ringleader Mohammed Tasadik Khan directed the raw supply, another figure was responsible for keeping the numbers straight. 25-year-old Razwan Arif from Dewsbury was described simply as the accountant, the man who turned illicit consignments into cold, hard figures, figures into ledgers, and ledgers into profit. Arif's critical role snapped into focus when officers seized his laptop. The device was a treasure trove, containing financial documents that revealed the organization's inner workings in stark detail. Line by line, the records charted the wholesale turnover of heroin and cocaine across the country. It was the balance sheet of a criminal corporation. The sums were astronomical, reflecting the scale of the supply Khan had established, and the cash returning via couriers. Detectives from West Yorkshire Police's Programme Precision team analysed the files and concluded Arif was no minor player. He had a significant role, controlling the very documentation that tethered the movement of stock to the profits collected. The ledgers confirmed what surveillance and seizures had already suggested. This was a £100 million operation, and Arif was the financial gatekeeper, ensuring the financial side remained ordered and hidden from scrutiny. For prosecutors, the documents on that laptop were vital. They showed more than just involvement. Arif's financial records placed him at the center of the enterprise. His capture meant the operation hadn't just lost its leader, it had lost its financial brain. When the case came before Leeds Crown Court in June 2025, prosecutors laid out the evidence from Arif's own laptop, evidence that could hardly be denied. For his central role, the court handed Arif a sentence of 9 years and 6 months. Together with the earlier convictions of ringleader Mohammed Tasadik Khan and Courier Hayyan Alam, the sentencing of Arif and Shabir finally closed the chapter on a conspiracy worth more than £100 million. The group had moved heroin and cocaine in wholesale volumes, but it was the combination of seizures, surveillance, and financial evidence that ultimately dismantled it. By the summer of 2020, EncroChat had become the hidden language of Britain's organised crime. But when international law enforcement gained access to the system, the secrecy evaporated. The platform became an intelligence goldmine for investigative agencies. Thousands of conversations were exposed. Among them were the messages of a Leeds man named Timothy, also reported in some accounts as Timothy Mirren. Mirren was linked directly to the supply of at least 3 kilograms of cocaine and more than 22 kilograms of ketamine. These weren't occasional sales, but wholesale quantities distributed into Leeds and beyond during the pandemic's early months. He was also tied to cannabis production, further expanding the group's portfolio. The breakthrough against him came months later. On February 12, 2021, officers intercepted Mirren while he was en route to complete another deal, carrying £20,000 in cash. The stop removed the immediate risk of another consignment moving into circulation, but it also provided the moment investigators had been waiting for. With him in custody, they could move to search his properties. At his then home in Hilton Court, Bramhope, officers recovered a half-kilo block of high-purity cocaine. Alongside it was a testing kit used to check purity levels. A tool confirming his role went beyond simple distribution. The searches didn't stop there. Across addresses linked to him, detectives unearthed more than £113,000 in cash. In a Leeds city centre safety deposit box, they discovered a collection of high-value watches worth an estimated £300,000. The finds painted a picture of a dealer living well above an ordinary life, hiding his wealth not in bank accounts, but in assets that could be shifted or concealed at short notice. His partner, 32-year-old Charlotte Donohoe, was also pulled into the case. At her address in Harley Green, Pudsey, police uncovered a cannabis growing system with a dozen plants. Alongside, it was 2.5 kilograms of cannabis, ready to be sold. Donohoe admitted her involvement. And though her role was not at the same scale as Mirren's, it tied her directly to the production and storage of drugs. When the case came to Leeds Crown Court in July 2025, the sentences reflected the scale and seriousness of the evidence. Mirren, then 35, received a term of 10 years and 8 months for offences including the supply of cocaine and ketamine, production of cannabis, and possession of criminal property. Donohoe was given a 150-hour community order for her part in the operation, recognising her lesser role, but nonetheless marking her involvement. What do you make of these cases? And the sentencing was handed down. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more real UK crime stories like this, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us. There's always another case to uncover.